Hi, everybody. This is Creston Davis from the Global Center for Advanced Studies, and I am really pleased to have with us as a guest today a PhD researcher in GCAS, Maiwand Rohani, who is working on his PhD and has an amazing supervisor. You've done so many amazing things, and you still are. And I couldn't believe when you applied to our program a year ago. So you're in year 2 now, but I couldn't believe all the things you were doing. I honestly looked at your CV going, there's no way somebody could be doing this much. So I wanted to actually talk with you today about the things that you do on the level of your job, your life, and your PhD. So yeah, talk to us about that. Tell us a little bit about your story. Where did you grow up and where were you educated? Yeah.
Thank you, Davis. I'm from Afghanistan, and I was born exactly during the Civil War. And I was born in 1983, and then that was the start of the Civil War. Not the start of the Civil War; it was the middle of the Civil War between the government and the Mujahideen. Finally, uh, we displaced basically. So I have studied my school during the displacement while living in a tent and in a tent and life and all that. Uh, I finished my school in Kabul, and I was graduated from one of the best schools in Afghanistan. That's a German school. It's a partnership between Germany and the Afghan government, and they are basically accepting students who achieve more than 95% in school. So that was my schooling, and then I had to start work and also to do my higher education. So you will not imagine that I used to travel from Afghanistan to Pakistan to a different country where I would attend my bachelor's and master's classes. So I would attend weekend classes as well as some of the week classes. So during the weekend, I would leave my office at 4 and I would travel to a different country, attend my classes, and come back on Monday and to attend my office. And then I would use my annual leaves to attend my classes. And by the time I was graduated, the Taliban government had ended, and we had the new government with the support from the Americans in 2001. And then it was a transition government. So we had a lot of jobs in Afghanistan, and we were rebuilding Afghanistan from zero. So people like us who were already higher educated had a lot of opportunities to join the work market and also to build. And it was a great opportunity. So uh, I joined the humanitarian sector with the USAID, the United States Agency for International Development, and we were building roads to the villages that were not accessible. We were building clinics, schools. So during the 3-4 years, we built like around 4,500 schools and clinics in Afghanistan, and I was part of the monitoring team to make sure that the contractors and whoever is building these clinics and schools and roads, that they are monitored and that they're meeting the quality. Uh, the achievements I had in my career was that I was the director of the Afghanistan Institute of Banking and Finance. That was the first institute of banking in Afghanistan, and basically was the start of establishing a financial sector in Afghanistan. We didn't have banks, we didn't have SWIFT, we had nothing. We had no capacity in the Ministry of Finance, in the central bank, or in the private banks. So in the institute, I have trained around 5,000 people who went into the banking sector and who then established the banks and went to the Ministry of Finance and to other microfinance institutions, and they worked there. And it was the first institute that offered bachelor degrees and master's degrees. And then we had the American University and all other universities, but this was the most specialized institute to offer banking and financial management degrees. I have established the Afghanistan humanitarian sector. I have revised the Afghanistan humanitarian assistance law, the emergency operations centers. I've established a national emergency operations center and 34 emergency operations centers in 34 provinces of Afghanistan. So these emergency operations centers would provide humanitarian aid when there was a disaster. For example, Afghanistan we're calling it a collection of the natural disasters. You can find all sorts of natural disasters in Afghanistan, such as the earthquake, flood, locust infestation, snow storms, landslides, drought. It's all in Afghanistan. And in addition to the human-induced disasters like the war, conflicts, and everything, we also have a high level of the natural disasters. So I was the first person to establish those systems for the National Disaster Management Authority of Afghanistan, for the provincial directorates, and to establish a national emergency response system, emergency assessment system, an emergency aid distribution system. I was leading the National Disaster Management Program at that time. So that was my achievements in the humanitarian sector. I was leading the Afghanistan's curriculum development program that was funded by the Danish government. We revised, my project, the project that I was leading, revised the national curricula. We have printed 24 million books for the primary education, and then we distributed it to all the schools. And then we established a teacher training program to train teachers to be able to deliver this curricula. These were all the achievements that were established for the first time in Afghanistan after the civil war and after the conflicts. It was back in 2001, and by 2008 and 11, we were able to have a banking system, an education system, a higher education system, National Emergency Operations Center, and all these sort of programs. And then I have started my career with the international organizations where I have visited the conflict impacted places, the countries, such as I was part of response system in tsunami, visited and responded in Thailand, in Sri Lanka, in India, and these. I was part of the earthquake response in Gujarat, India. I visited Nepal for the disarmament program to disarm the armed groups. I went to Syria for the the response to the Syrian war. I visited Iraq to respond to the war impacted people in Iraq. And then I ended up all my career in the Middle East. So now I'm the CEO of an international organization that's called International Network for Aid, Relief, and Assistance. It's an American organization that is mainly focused in delivering aid to the people that are impacted by natural or human-induced disasters, mainly in the Middle East, but we are also working in Ukraine and Afghanistan. Our current services include medical assistance for children that are injured in the war and natural disasters, providing mental health and psychosocial support for children and caregivers and families. We provide them with education in emergencies. When a country is hit by a disaster or there is a conflict, the children are displaced. They cannot attend normal schools. So what we do is we establish temporary schooling for them. So it's the education in emergency is not a normal education. It's a psychosocial support that's integrated with education. So you're providing education, but it's also uh, giving a feeling to the children that they're normal. It's a normalization, like
Wow.
nothing has happened. So the
Yeah.
children can maintain their mental health, but also can catch up with the schools. So what happens when the conflict is over, when the war is over, then we are calling it accelerated learning program. So the children are going back to their age appropriate classes, and they've missed like 2 years of 3 years of education. So what they do is, because we provide them with emergency education, they have that knowledge. So they go and pass the exams and they're able to catch up with their classes. So that's for the education. For the children that have mental health issues, I mean, most of the children that are impacted by the war, they have different type of mental health conditions. They lost their caregivers, they lost their home, they lost their loved ones. Uh, Very recently, like now, we're working in Syria, which is after I mean the recent changes. The government of Bashar al-Assad was not less than a war; it was a dictatorship. But the level of oppression and the level of cruelty that this government had, you cannot imagine. Like nobody can imagine that the government would do this to their own people, like depriving them of food. A family could only get one time bread. That's a bread. People were not able to access electricity, no electricity. They had electricity, but they were not allowing people to use that. They were not access to education. The, I found children in prison. You know why they were in prison? They were watching cartoons, international cartoons. Nobody was allowed to watch international TV. And I saw two kids. They were in the prison for 2 years, and then we asked them like, how did this happen? They said we were collecting pictures of cartoons from the garbage, and the police arrested us. They said you are not allowed to collect pictures of the cartoon, and they were in the prison for 2 years. People were not allowed to buy fuel. I went to Syria uh, immediately after the government was collapsed, and the taxi driver, he did not uh, let me pay him. I said, "Why? I mean, you drive." He said, "No, I'm so happy. This is my first time that I was able to take out my car because I could not buy fuel." So I was asking people, and some of them told me that now everything has changed. Only in few days things have changed. Like in the evening, you could find people collecting food from the garbage, the leftovers. So this was the situation in Syria that we are working now. And Lebanon, you go and you see that the entire village is flattened just because of one person. Like one person was against the Israeli government, or I don't know what's the political situation, but let's say there's one Hezbollah member in that community, in that village, they would flatten the entire village. So people have 1.5 million people have been displaced. Imagine a country with only 5 million population. 1.5 million have been displaced. They're the people who've been living in streets. The hospitals are overwhelmed. And we're now treating around 1,300 only injured children. And the ones that are been impacted, I mean, the ones with the mental health issues. Now, that's the Lebanon issue. Now, going into Gaza, the Palestine, I mean, it's uh, throughout my 20 years of experience with the conflict zone, with the war zones, regions that are impacted by natural disaster, let's say tsunami, the worst, or Typhoon Nargis, or Gujarat earthquake, or the Turkish earthquake, there is no such an incident. Like, I cannot give you an example of a crisis or of a humanitarian situation, the one I witnessed in Gaza, in Palestine. I mean, the need, Gaza needs 50 trucks of food a day. You know how many trucks are allowed to enter? Five. Five. It's like, so, you know, when people meet in the morning, how they greet each other? They don't say hi, hello. Did you eat food last night? Because the those are privileged who eat one-time food in 24 hours. Even if you have money, you cannot buy food. You know how much is the cost of one chicken? $125. If you find it, it will be $125. So you have money, but there's no food in the market. You cannot buy it. And then, so people are displaced. They're calling it so-called deconflicted areas. So people move to deconflicted area. And in the middle of the night, it's a conflict area. So what happens? They send an SMS to all the people that are living in that area, and they announce it a conflict zone. So everybody has to evacuate. So people evacuate and they move to a different location. No food, no shelter, nothing. And thousands of people have moved. Gaza Strip is a very small area. You can, I mean, I know you've seen it, you have traveled to it. It's small, so they move and then they start bombing them. It's the children, and then, okay, so they're bombed, whatever you call it. Now people are injured. They need to receive treatment. They go to the hospital and they bomb the hospital. Flatten. And then they stop anesthesia and all the medical supplies. I met doctors. I mean, doctors are all, they all have mental issues. They have performed surgeries without anesthesia. Imagine. The children, they have lost their lives during the surgery because of no anesthesia, because of the pain and the blood they lost. And it's thousands of children. It's a very recent story. 3 weeks ago, a child was injured, Habiba, a, a 3 to 4 years old child. And she had a condition that the blood flow, it's Gangali or something. It is a very difficult medical name. I'm not a medical professional, but so she had time to be evacuated and to be treated. It was treatable. They did not allow her to go out. They did not allow her caregiver to go out. They let her stay in Gaza for 2 weeks. The girl is now in Jordan. He lost 3 limbs, 1 leg, 2 arms. So we could have saved her. My organization have arranged a travel for her, a hospital for her. Everything was organized. We only needed a permission. You know that going in Gaza and coming out of Gaza, you have to get permission. You cannot go in and go out and come out. So the process is that you have to apply to UNOPS, and then they give you a seat in their convoy to the Gaza. And then they send that list to COGAT, is an organization that approves the in and out from Gaza. So they approve 7 hours before your entry to Gaza, which means if you are traveling from the United States or UK or Europe, you have to come to Jordan. And then if you deny it, you have to go back to the US. Like they could easily deny you when you are in the US. You don't have to travel to. Uh, I was denied 2 weeks ago. Like I'm a humanitarian worker for the past 20 years. Never been a politician. Never been uh, a supporter of any party. You know, I'm just a humanitarian worker. I see a human and I help, regardless of what religion, what party, what ideology, what race, doesn't matters. I see a human, I help. And they denied. And all of us, it's not me denied. They denied a group of medical professionals who came voluntarily from UK to go to Gaza. And there were like children waiting for them, waiting for the surgery, waiting for these doctors to arrive and perform surgery and to save lives. You know what's going to happen to those children? They lost their life because the doctors were not allowed to go inside Gaza. It was a team of doctors. So
Oh my
these
gosh. Wow.
medication, uh, medications are not allowed. Uh, just last week, 5 children uh, lost their lives because of the weather, cold weather. They were frozen to death. Why? Because blankets are not essential. That's why we do not allow blankets to us. If you keep telling people to evacuate from their homes, conflicted zone, deconflict, then conflict, then how are people going to manage if you bomb the entire city? Buildings collapsed. How are people going to live? People are tortured with the cold weather, no food, no medical services. 80%, 80% of the hospitals are completely collapsed. The 20% are 50% functional.
Wow. I
And
wonder, I wonder, this is, it's so good to have firsthand knowledge of what's happening because so often it's filtered through biased media. So it's amazing that you can communicate these things as in these tragedies. I wonder too about how you're relating the work that you do to the PhD you're doing in terms of your research. Um, is it related?
it's very much related, Davis. It's very much related. You know, my PhD is about how the immigrants settle in these countries, why these countries are against the immigrants, and is it the immigrants' fault? Like, I ended up in a country because my country was bombed by some other country. And then how is that my fault? I ended up in a country, but I'm also an educated person and I contribute to the economy of that country. Uh, so if the government of that country has failed to establish policies for me, strategies for me, that's not my fault. But I'm the citizen of this world. I should be able, I mean, it's my human rights. Seeking asylum is a human right. And it's my human right. If I am not safe in my country and if I seek asylum in another country, that's my human right. I mean, these countries, I mean, all these countries who are talking about the human rights, they are violating one of the human rights. So my PhD, I'm doing a research on both sides, that there are some gaps in the government and that there are some gaps within the refugee community. And if the government is able to develop some good policies, they could benefit from these refugees, and they could be a backbone of the economy of that country. They have high potential and high energy that could be used. And then the immigrants, when they move to a country, they should be able to integrate into that country, because that country has its culture, its history, uh, uh, its values. And as an immigrant, you have to make sure that you respect all of them, and to be able to integrate into the community and to live with that community, and not to be against the community. Now that you're living with the community, so the complaint there are, because I'm doing research and I'm doing interviews with both host community and with the refugees. So the host community is saying that they don't respect our values. Like, today is our national day, a national day of something. They don't know about this day, and they kind of make fun of it. And the refugees say, we don't make fun of it. It's just that we have a different cultural approach to it. I mean, we're so different. So it's just, I mean, it's adjustment from both sides. I mean, to be able to live happily together, the refugees need to change things, and that the government needs to have policies in place to support them. So my research will provide those recommendations for both sides.
That's amazing, incredible research. I think GCAS is honored to have someone like you in our program, who is also a leader around the world in a humanitarian way, and also doing high-level research in areas like the areas you're doing that is so needed today. And I'm just honored to have you part of our program. I wonder, how did you come across GCAS? I wonder about how you found out about the Global Center for Advanced Studies, GCAS College Dublin.
I was so I was researching a lot of universities, and then I heard this one thing very unique, is the debt-free university, where you don't have to get a lot of loan to pay for your university. And then after you graduate from university, then you're planning to have a good career, but then you have so much loan that will not allow you to enjoy your education. So, and then the other thing which I found was very unique is owned by the faculties. Like, whoever studies in the university, whoever teaches at the university, they're the stakeholder of the university. I mean,
Exactly.
this is a unique approach. It's not only education. It's because I'm a humanitarian person. I love things that make it easy for other people to access. I mean, there are people that are privileged, but there are people that they are smart, they want to
Yeah.
study, but they cannot
Yeah.
afford. So GCAS is a place for them to come and study. I mean, people, the intellectuals that we have in our class around us, I mean, they're amazing. I've studied in all other universities. It's hard for people to connect, but here we connect to each other. We see what others are working on. They share, I mean, the level of knowledge that's being shared with each other.
That's
Uh,
so cool.
uh, yeah,
And you and I are
it's
actually talking about working with a university in Afghanistan potentially too. So that's something we need to continue to work on. That you suggested partnering with a university in
yes,
Afghanistan. I do think that because of the 25 years of devastation, more, but recently 25 years that have disrupted the Middle East, Afghanistan, Iraq, that in Iran, obviously, but Iraq, that with the wars and then the immigration and all this, I do think that something like that GCAS is doing, allowing for an EU accredited degree anywhere in the world, as long as you're qualified and you have a good internet connection, I think there are a lot of folks coming who are thirsty for this, coming from these areas of the world that the Western powers have really upset and devastated. And it's amazing to see GCAS folks from Pakistan, from Iran, Iraq, in the Middle East, all coming, Lebanon, all coming to GCAS, Morocco, and so on. And you in Turkey, you're in Istanbul today. And of course, events unfolded today in Istanbul that make it difficult even for our internet connection. Earlier, we were having problems. So
Yes, yes.
I think we're on the same, let's say, movement towards healing the earth, towards a humanitarian response. I don't know if it will be enough, but I think having someone like you and others with us, at least we are doing it, even if in the long term, it will be disrupted by greed, by Western powers, and by corruption.
Exactly. I mean, look, we have humanitarian workers like us. We go and we provide medical support. We provide food, water, shelter, whatever. But then we need to have intellectuals, researchers with the humanitarian mindset. So imagine today, Syria has a government, but then you need to have strong people to build and to support them with policies to, to make sure people receive all the services. Imagine now Afghanistan, it was, it's so, every country that we discuss, I don't know the political parts of it, but imagine you fight a group for 20 years and then you hand over the entire country to the same group and then you leave. Then you leave. That's it. No transition plan, no strategy, nothing. You just leave in the middle of the night and the entire, I mean, who does that? I mean, we have seen a lot of transitions in the world. Taliban are not the first armed group who took over the government. There are many other examples. But who does that? I mean, you could have planned it. I mean, I don't know. It's for us, it's very easy to say it's a simple thing. You plan it and you do the transition. You just don't leave in one day and hand over the entire government to the people that you know cannot run the government. Were never in the government. They were fighting somewhere in the mountains, and next day you give them a generation, a 21st century generation, educated people, universities, schools, media, 110 media outlets, around 200 higher education universities, infrastructure, systems, everything, all gone. Gone. Imagine, Davis, we work day and night in Afghanistan. We, the educated group of young boys and girls, we worked. I don't remember if I've gone home after 8 hours. The minimum we would work 10 hours, 13 hours. We worked up to 18 hours. I remember my colleagues, we used to sleep in the office to work on the national budget, to work on the systems, to work on the education, everything in Afghanistan to build the system. Just we sacrificed. We said maybe our children would have a better life. It's fine. We can sacrifice. I mean, there are a lot of people who sacrificed for a next generation. It's not only us.
Is that
But
why
then,
you're in Turkey now? Because essentially you couldn't stay in your own country.
exactly, I have a daughter. I mean, I could go, but my daughter cannot study. How am I have a 14 years old daughter. I have another 10 years old daughter. I have two daughters, and they're not allowed to go to school. And even if I told you I'm working in a humanitarian, I accept a lot of risks. I can go back to Afghanistan. And I went to Afghanistan and I went and I talked to the Taliban. I said, what's your problem? Why you don't allow girls to go to school? Is it forbidden in Islam? No. No religion would disallow girls to go to school. No religion in the world, including Islam. Why do you guys, if you think you're Islamists, this is against Islam? Why don't you not allow women to go out? Considering that those who fought against the America, those who were with the Americans, they lost their lives. We had 653,000 men we lost. 653,000 widow families we have in Afghanistan. Only during the last 21 years. I said, how are those women going to live? Each woman has 1, 2, 3, up to 5 children. Now multiply that into 653,000 and imagine how many children do not have a breadwinner today.
I've never heard it put in those terms before, and it's so gut-wrenching to hear that.
Let me give you another statistics. After the US funds were pulled, the US aid, the Trump thing, 200,000 HIV/AIDS, the patients will not receive treatment. The treatment stopped. 12,000 pregnant women who used to receive medical services during their pregnancy and during the delivery, they're not going to receive that. 12,000 pregnant women. 220 medical facilities closed. 100,000, more than 100,000 local, we are calling it community-based health worker, stopped work. Just after Trump pulled out the US aid funding from Afghanistan.
I mean, that to me is not a pro-life position. That's a pro-death position, if you ask me. That policy change is not pro-life. It's not caring, or it's not about giving what you have to those who do not have it, which is fundamentally an ethical principle, a Christian principle, an Islamic principle. But in the end, this is not about life. It's a policy of death, and it's ripping the world apart right now.
Exactly. The reason I'm saying this, like these things are happening is just because we have people that are educated, but they cannot think like there are human that are being impacted by the policies we develop. We make a decision, pull out the USAID funds, but then what? How many human are losing their life? When you go and provide funding, you have to know that there are people relying on those funding now. The moment you stop that, then there are people that are vulnerable now, and that they may lose their life. In my organization, it's a small organization, and I might provide like support to 50,000 or so, but I don't start an intervention if I cannot end it, if I cannot, if I do not have an exit strategy.
So you need a budget, and then a plan and a budget to make sure that plan will happen, no matter if the US pulls funding or the EU, or whatever happens, you need the budget and a plan that works together.
Yes. When I start a treatment for a child, I have to complete that treatment regardless of what happens. I mean, it's a small, I mean, US with this level of, intellectuals and policymakers, how could they fail to realize this, that you're funding a country, uh, it's development aid. You stop that, you can stop it. Yes, I'm saying there might be some programs that are not needed. There might be some corruption, whatever, but at least review that. Find out which one is needed, which one is not needed, and stop the ones that are not needed. You cannot just, you say it's a blanket approval. Okay, all funding stopped. I mean, so the point is that education institutions like GCAS that are bringing intellectuals and then promoting this humanitarian way of working. I mean, the world needs it. The world needs this type of institution in people who have the intellectual ability as well as the humanitarian mindset to see a
Well,
human.
and we need you,
or
and we
see-
need you. It's like it's mutually reinforcing that to have someone like you and others in GCAS to carry on. We don't know where it will all go, but I think it's important that we are in communion with each other. We're sharing our values and our intellectual gifts. And I want to really thank you for spending time with us this past hour talking about your organization, which we'll put in the description below. Please feel free to contribute now that the US aid has been cut. And now's the time, if you have and you can afford it, to give to others. And this organization is an amazing organization. And I want to thank you for your time. Thanks so much for the stories and your research.
Thank you, Davis. Thank you very much.